The morning sun rose over the crystal cities of Kythera Prime, casting rainbow patterns through the tall spires that housed millions of peaceful beings. The Kythari people had built their civilization on knowledge and harmony. For 3,000 years they had never known war. Their biggest problems were trade disputes and academic debates. Zara Ka, the elected speaker of the Kythari collective, stood in her office high above the main city. She watched the floating gardens drift between the towers, carrying fresh food to the markets below. Children of many different species played together in the parks. The Kythari had always welcomed other peaceful races to live among them. "Speaker, we have a problem," said her assistant, rushing into the room. His 4 eyes were wide with fear. "Long-range sensors are picking up something strange at the edge of our system." Zaraka turned from the window. She had never seen her assistant so scared. "What kind of something?" "Ships, lots of them. But they're not like any ships we know. They look alive." The screen in Zaraka's office lit up with images from their outer sensors. What she saw made her blood run cold. The ships were indeed alive, massive creatures of flesh and bone with weapons that looked like giant teeth and claws. Each ship was the size of a city. "Have they responded to our greeting signals?" Zaraka asked. "They have, Speaker. But you won't like what they said." The communication came through in a harsh, growling language that their computers had to translate. "We are the Vorthak hegemony. Your worlds now belong to us. Surrender or be consumed." Zaraka felt her legs grow weak. In all their history, no one had ever threatened the Kythari. They had always solved problems with words, not weapons. "Send a reply," she said. "Tell them we want to talk. Offer them trade agreements, technology sharing, anything they want." The answer came back quickly. It was a video message that made Zaraka sick to her stomach. The Vorthak leader was a massive creature with razor-sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. Behind him she could see cages filled with beings from other worlds, beings that were clearly being prepared as food. "We do not trade with prey," the creature snarled. "We take what we want. You have 1 day to prepare for our arrival." The transmission ended. Zaraka's office fell silent except for the soft humming of the city outside. Her people had no weapons, no armies, no way to fight back. Their defense fleet was made up of small ships designed for rescue missions and exploration, not war. "Call an emergency meeting of all world leaders," Zaraka said, "and contact our allies in the Galactic Council. Someone must be able to help us." Over the next few hours, the responses came in from across the galaxy. The Altarian Republic sent their regrets but said they were too far away to help. The Centauri Federation offered to take in refugees but couldn't send military aid. The Andorian Trade Union simply stopped answering their calls. Then came the message that broke Zaraka's heart. The Galactic Council, the organization that was supposed to protect peaceful worlds, sent a simple reply. "The Vorthak hegemony is too powerful. We cannot risk war with them. We advise immediate evacuation." As night fell on Kythera Prime, the first Vorthak ships entered the system. They moved like predators, slow and confident. They knew their prey had nowhere to run. The attack began at dawn. The Vorthak bioships released swarms of smaller creatures that dove toward the planet like falling stars. When they hit the outer defense platforms, they exploded with organic acid that ate through metal and crystal alike. The beautiful floating gardens fell from the sky as the creatures destroyed their anti-gravity systems. The crystal towers began to crack and fall as the acid rain spread across the city. People ran through the streets carrying their children and crying for help that would not come. Zaraka stood in her emergency bunker, watching her world die on dozens of screens. Her communications officer worked frantically at his station, sending out message after message. "Any response from the galactic powers?" She asked. "Nothing, Speaker. Everyone is too afraid of the Vorthak to help." "Then send a general distress call. Send it on all frequencies to every world, every ship, every listening post in the galaxy. Someone somewhere must be willing to help innocent people." The message went out across space, carried by quantum communication arrays to every corner of known civilization. It was simple and desperate. "This is the Kythari Collective. We are under attack by the Vorthak hegemony. Our people are dying. We have never harmed anyone. We ask for help from any civilization that believes in protecting the innocent. Please, if you can hear this, help us." Most worlds that received the message simply deleted it. The Vorthak were too dangerous to anger. Better to stay quiet and hope they never came your way. But on a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy, a human operator named Lieutenant Sarah Martinez was working the night shift at the Deep Space Monitoring Station. She had been listening to alien chatter for 3 years, mostly routine trade communications and scientific data. When the Caithari distress call came through, Sarah sat up straight in her chair. She had heard of the Caithari. They were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders and scholars. The translation software worked quickly, turning the alien words into English. Sarah listened to the whole message twice. Then she listened to the follow-up transmissions that came over the next hour. Updates on the attack, casualty reports, desperate pleas for help. The alien sounded terrified. She picked up her phone and called her supervisor. "Sir, you need to hear this. We've got aliens asking for military help against something called the Vorthak hegemony." "The Vorthak?" Her supervisor's voice was suddenly very serious. "Send me everything you have. Right now." Within an hour, the message was on its way up the chain of command. From the monitoring station to Pacific Fleet Command, from there to the Pentagon, and finally to Admiral Sarah Chen, the head of the Terran Defense Coalition. Admiral Chen was in her office at dawn when the priority message came through. She read the translation of the Caithari distress call, then watched the video footage that had been intercepted from the attack. The images showed a peaceful world being destroyed by creatures that looked like nightmares. Cities burning, people running in terror, children crying as their homes fell around them. It reminded her of old videos from Earth's worst conflicts. Chen had spent her whole career preparing for the day when humanity might face a real threat from space. She had never imagined that the first real test would be whether humans were willing to fight for strangers. She picked up her secure phone and began making calls, first to the president, then to allied military leaders around the world. The conversation was the same each time. "We have aliens asking for help against genocidal attackers. They're peaceful people being slaughtered for no reason. What do we do?" The answer, when it came, surprised even Admiral Chen. For the first time in human history, every major military power on Earth agreed on something immediately. They would help. The order went out to every naval base, every spaceport, every military installation on the planet. Prepare for immediate deployment. We're going to war. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the main command center of Luna Base, watching the largest military operation in human history take shape. Through the massive windows, she could see ships arriving from every corner of the solar system. The sight took her breath away. The American fleet came first, sleek destroyers and massive carriers that had been patrolling the outer planets. Then came the European Union ships, their hulls painted white with blue stripes. The Russian vessels were darker, built like floating fortresses. Chinese ships arrived in perfect formation, followed by Japanese cruisers that looked like works of art. But it wasn't just the major powers. Ships came from Brazil, India, Australia, Canada, and dozens of smaller nations. For the first time ever, humanity was united in a single cause. "Admiral," said Captain Rodriguez, her chief of staff, "we've got over 200 ships assembled. That's more firepower than we've ever put together." Chen nodded, but her face was troubled. "It might not be enough. We don't know what we're facing out there." The truth was that humanity had never fought a real space war. They had weapons designed for it, ships built for it, but no experience. The Vorthak had been conquering worlds for centuries. They knew how to fight in space. "Ma'am," called Lieutenant Kim from the communication station, "we're getting more intelligence from the Caithari system. It's not good." The main screen lit up with images from long-range sensors. 3 more Caithari worlds had fallen in the past day. The Vorthak weren't just conquering them. They were destroying everything. Cities burned, forests were stripped bare, and the orbital platforms that had taken centuries to build were being torn apart for raw materials. "They're not even trying to keep the infrastructure," observed Dr. Patel, the fleet's xenobiology expert. "This looks like they're treating the worlds as food sources." Chen felt her jaw tighten. She had seen enough wars to recognize pure evil when she saw it. The Vorthak weren't conquering for territory or resources. They were destroying for the joy of it. "Admiral," Rodriguez said quietly, "the President is on line 1. Chen picked up the secure phone. "Mr. President, Admiral, I want to be clear about your orders. You have full authority to engage the Vorthak forces. No restrictions. No rules of engagement beyond the laws of war. Stop them." "Understood, sir." "What about casualties?" "Our casualties, I mean. Those people out there are depending on us, Admiral. Do what you have to do." Chen hung up and looked around the command center. Every person there knew they were about to make history. The question was what kind of history it would be. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," she said into the fleet communication system. "We're about to jump into unknown territory to fight an enemy we've never faced before. Some of you are wondering why we're risking human lives for aliens we've never met." She paused, looking out at the assembled fleet. Each ship represented thousands of people who had volunteered for this mission. The answer is simple. We're doing this because it's right. These aliens asked for help and we're the only ones willing to give it. That says something about who we are as a species. Today we show the galaxy what humans do when innocent people are in danger. The response came back from 200 ships at once. "Understood, Admiral." "Ready to jump," Chen turned to her navigation officer. "Set course for the Kithari system. Maximum speed." The jump to hyperspace was unlike anything humans had attempted before. Instead of single ships or small groups, the entire fleet jumped together. The coordination required was incredible. One mistake could scatter ships across the galaxy or worse. But humanity had always been good at organizing for war. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kithari system in perfect formation. What they found there made every human crew member angry. The Kithari homeworld was burning. From space, they could see the massive fires covering entire continents. The beautiful crystal cities were gone, replaced by crude mining operations. Orbital stations that had floated peacefully for centuries were being dismantled by swarms of Vorthak ships. "Tactical. Give me a count on enemy forces," Chen ordered. "Over 300 Vorthak ships, Admiral. They're big. Some of them are larger than our biggest carriers." Chen studied the tactical display. The Vorthak ships were indeed massive, but they moved slowly. They looked organic, like giant space creatures rather than built vessels. "They don't know we're here yet," reported the sensor officer. "Their attention is focused on the planet." Chen made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Instead of announcing their presence or demanding surrender, she gave the order that started humanity's first interstellar war. "All ships, open fire. Priority targets are any Vorthak vessels attacking civilian areas." The human fleet struck like a thunderbolt. Missiles launched from hundreds of ships, crossing the space between the fleets in seconds. Railgun rounds followed, accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields. The Vorthak had never faced weapons like these. Their bioships were designed to absorb energy attacks and deflect plasma weapons. But kinetic weapons, simple pieces of metal traveling at enormous speeds, tore through their organic hulls like bullets through flesh. The first Vorthak ship to die was a massive creature that had been using some kind of energy beam to melt a Kithari city. 3 human missiles hit it simultaneously, and it simply came apart in the explosion of organic matter. "Direct hit," called the weapons officer. "Target destroyed." Across the fleet, similar reports came in. The surprise attack had caught the Vorthak completely off guard. In the first minute of combat, humanity destroyed 12 enemy ships, but the Vorthak were not helpless. As soon as they realized they were under attack, they turned to face this new threat. Their own weapons were terrifying. Bioships that launched swarms of smaller creatures, energy beams that could melt through metal, and something that looked like living projectiles. The first human ship to die was the destroyer Courage. A Vorthak bioprojectile hit it directly, and the entire ship was dissolved by some kind of acid in seconds. 200 human lives were gone in an instant. "They're adapting faster than expected," Chen observed grimly. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Don't let them target you directly." The battle turned into a deadly dance. Human ships used their speed and maneuverability to avoid the Vorthak's powerful but slow weapons. In return, they hit the enemy with quick strikes from long range. But it was the human fighters that really surprised the Vorthak. Small, fast ships launched from the carriers and swarmed the enemy vessels like angry insects. The fighters were piloted by humans who had trained in Earth's atmosphere, dodging through gravity wells and weather systems that would kill most aliens. In space, with full 3-dimensional movement, human pilots were like nothing the Vorthak had ever faced. They flew patterns that made no sense to an enemy that thought in terms of straight-line attacks and defensive formations. "Fighter Squadron 12 to Fleet Command," came a voice over the radio. "We're getting reports from Vorthak ships. They're trying to jam our communications, but our equipment is cutting through their signals like they're not even there." Chen smiled grimly. Human technology might not be the most advanced in the galaxy, but it was built to work in the worst possible conditions. Earth's violent weather and strong magnetic field had forced human engineers to build electronics that could work anywhere. The battle raged for 3 hours. When it ended, the space around the Kytheri homeworld was filled with the wreckage of Vorthak bioships. The surviving enemy vessels were retreating to the outer system, clearly planning to regroup. Casualty report, Chen ordered. 15 ships lost, Admiral. About 3,000 casualties. But we destroyed over 60 enemy vessels, Chen nodded. The price was high, but they had won the first battle. More importantly, they had saved the surviving Kythari on the homeworld. Communications send a message to the planet's surface. Tell them help has arrived. The response came back in the musical language of the Kythari, translated by their computers. Who are you? Are you truly here to help us? Chen picked up the microphone herself. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the human fleet. We received your distress call. We're here to help. There was a long pause. Then, humans, but your species is listed as dangerous in all our records. You come from a death world. Chen looked out at her fleet. Ships from every nation on Earth, crews who had volunteered to risk their lives for strangers. Maybe that's exactly what you need right now. The human medical ships were the first to reach the surface of Kythera Prime. Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped off the landing shuttle and tried not to show her shock at what she saw. The beautiful crystal cities she had seen in the intelligence briefings were gone. In their place were smoking ruins and hastily built refugee camps. The Kythari people were unlike anything humans had ever encountered. They stood about 7 feet tall with 4 arms and large eyes that seemed to glow with inner light. Right now, those eyes were filled with fear and hope in equal measure. You are truly here to help? Asked Zaraka, the Kythari leader who had sent the original distress call. Her translator device made her musical voice sound almost human. Your species is known to us only through trading reports. They say you are from a death world, that you are dangerous. Dr. Vasquez knelt down to examine a wounded Kythari child. The little one had been burned by Vorthak acid weapons, but the injuries were treatable with human medical technology. We are dangerous, she said simply, but only to those who hurt innocent people. Over the next few days, the galaxy learned what it meant when humans decided to help. Medical ships established field hospitals that treated not just Kythari, but refugees from dozens of other species who had fled Vorthak attacks. Engineering teams worked around the clock to restore power and clean water to the damaged cities, but it was the military response that really shocked the galactic community. Admiral Chen had divided her fleet into 3 groups. One stayed to protect the Kythari homeworld. The second group moved to secure the outer planets of the system. The third group, led by Chen herself, began hunting down the remaining Vorthak forces. The hunting was different from the first battle. This time, the humans weren't fighting to defend a fixed position. They were on the attack, and the Vorthak learned why Earth was called a death world. Captain Maria Santos commanded the destroyer, Relentless. She had grown up in the slums of São Paulo, where you learned to fight or you didn't survive. Now she was chasing a Vorthak bioship through an asteroid field, using skills that had been passed down through generations of humans who had fought to survive. Target is trying to hide. Behind the large asteroid, reported her weapons. Officer, he's thinking like prey, Santos said with a cold smile. On Earth, we learned to hunt in 3 dimensions. Take us under the asteroid field. We'll come up behind him. The Vorthak commander never saw it coming. His ship had been designed to fight in open space with clear lines of sight. When the human destroyer appeared directly beneath him, firing rockets at point-blank range, his bioship died before he could even understand what had happened. Across the system, similar scenes were playing out. Human ships moved like pack hunters, coordinating their attacks with a precision that amazed and terrified other species. They used the asteroids, the planets, even the system's star as weapons in their campaign. The Vorthak tried to adapt. They sent out their own hunting packs, bioships designed to track and kill smaller vessels. But they had never faced anything like human fighter pilots. Lieutenant Jake Wildfire Morrison was flying his fighter through the rings of Kythera's gas giant when he encountered a Vorthak hunter. The alien ship was 3 times the size of his fighter and armed with weapons that could vaporize him in seconds. Morrison had learned to fly in the skies above Colorado, dodging through mountain peaks and sudden storm fronts. In space, with no weather to worry about, he felt like he was flying in slow motion. The Vorthak ship fired a biomissile that should have killed him instantly. Morrison simply wasn't there when it arrived. He had already looped around a chunk of ice and was coming at his enemy from a completely different angle. His missiles hit the Vorthak ship from behind, tearing through its organic armor. The alien vessel tried to turn to face him, but Morrison was already gone, diving toward the planet's surface where the thick atmosphere would give him even more advantages. The chase lasted 20 minutes. When it ended, the Vorthak hunter was a cloud of organic debris floating among the ice rings. "This is wildfire to Fleet Command," Morrison reported. "Target destroyed. These things are big and scary, but they fly like trucks." Back on the Cathari homeworld, the aliens were learning what human dangerous really meant. Teams of human soldiers were clearing Vorthak ground forces from the cities with an efficiency that shocked everyone who watched. The Vorthak had left behind garrison troops, creatures designed for intimidation and crowd control. They were used to dealing with peaceful species who would run at the first sign of violence. They had never faced soldiers from a world where violence was a survival skill. Sergeant Tom Williams had fought in 3 different wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars. Now he was leading a squad of Marines through the ruins of a Cathari school, hunting down Vorthak troops who had been using the building as a torture center. The Vorthak soldiers were 7 feet tall with natural armor and claws like knives. In hand-to-hand combat, they could tear apart most alien species. But they had never fought humans before. Williams and his team moved through the building like ghosts. They used every piece of cover, every shadow, every sound to their advantage. When they finally confronted the Vorthak troops, the aliens found themselves facing an enemy that simply wouldn't stop coming. The Vorthak relied on fear and intimidation. They would roar and display their claws, expecting their enemies to run. Williams and his Marines just kept shooting. "Target down," Williams reported into his radio. "School is secure. We've got about 30 Cathari civilians safe in the basement." The response from the Cathari rescue teams was immediate. "Understood, Sergeant. Medical teams are on the way, and thank you." The news of human military success spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communication. For the first time in centuries, the Vorthak hegemony was not just being resisted, it was being defeated. Other alien civilizations began to take notice. The peaceful Altarians, who had refused to help the Cathari, sent a message asking if humanity might be interested in a defense treaty. The Centauri Federation offered to share their advanced shield technology in exchange for human weapons designs. But it was the message from the Galactic Council that really showed how much had changed. "Admiral Chen," came the transmission from the council chambers. "This is Chancellor Mortai of the Galactic Council. We wish to discuss the human military intervention in Cathari space." Chen took the call in her ready room aboard the flagship, Indomitable. The Chancellor was a tall, thin alien with gray skin and large black eyes. His species, the Dalari, had been the dominant political force in the galaxy for over 1,000 years. "Chancellor," Chen said simply, "what can I do for you?" "We are concerned about the implications of your actions. The Vorthak hegemony has been a stabilizing force in this region for centuries." Chen felt her temper rise. She had seen the footage from Vorthak-controlled worlds. "Stabilizing? They're committing genocide. The galaxy requires order, Admiral. Sometimes that order comes at a cost." Chen stood up from her chair. Her voice became very quiet and very dangerous. "Chancellor, let me make something clear. Humanity didn't ask for permission to defend innocent people, and we don't need it. We're going to keep fighting the Vorthak until they stop killing civilians. If you have a problem with that, you're welcome to try and stop us." The Chancellor's eyes widened. No one had ever spoken to the Galactic Council that way. "Admiral, you must understand your species is new to galactic politics. There are rules, protocols." "There's one rule that matters," Chen interrupted. "Don't murder innocent people. The Vorthak broke that rule. Now they deal with us." The transmission ended. Chen sat back down and smiled grimly. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't play by the old rules. On the bridge of the Indomitable, the tactical officer called out, "Admiral, we're getting reports from long-range scouts. Vorthak reinforcements are heading for this system. Looks like a major fleet movement." Chen nodded. She had expected this. "The Vorthak wouldn't give up easily. Send word to all human ships," she ordered, "and ask our Cathari friends if they want to help us fight. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten people under human protection." The galaxy was about to witness its first real war in centuries. And for the first time, the victims were going to win. The Vorthak Reinforcement Fleet was the largest military force assembled in over 200 years. 300 bioships, each one a living weapon bred for destruction, moved through space toward the Cathari system. At their head was the Devourer of Worlds, a massive ship creature that had personally conquered 47 planets. On the bridge of this monster, Supreme War Leader Krath Zahn studied the reports from the recent battles with growing confusion and rage. His forces hadn't just been defeated, they had been humiliated by a species he had never even heard of. Humans, he growled, tasting the word like something foul. What manner of prey dares to challenge the hegemony? His intelligence officer, a smaller Vorthak with scars covering half his face, brought forward a datapad. War Leader, we have gathered information about this species. They come from a world the galaxy calls a death world, a planet so hostile that only the most aggressive life forms can survive. Krath Zahn looked at the images from Earth with interest. Massive storms, violent earthquakes, active volcanoes, and creatures that killed for survival rather than conquest. So they are natural predators like us. Not like us, War Leader. We hunt for territory and food. They seem to hunt for concepts. Honor, justice, protection of the weak. Our psychological warfare has no effect on them. This was what bothered Krath Zahn the most. The Vorthak had conquered the galaxy by breaking the will of their enemies before the fighting even began. They would broadcast recordings of their victories, show captured prisoners being consumed, demonstrate the futility of resistance. Most species surrendered before the first shot was fired, but the humans had seen all of this and just gotten angry. War Leader, called the communications officer. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They're demanding our surrender. Krath Zahn felt his rage boil over. They demand our surrender? Show me. The main screen lit up with the image of Admiral Chen. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, surrounded by officers who looked like they had been carved from stone. When she spoke, her voice was calm and deadly. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Coalition. You are in violation of the basic laws of civilized behavior. You have committed genocide against peaceful populations. I am authorized to offer you one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be taken into custody for war crimes trials. The silence on the Vorthak bridge was complete. No one had ever spoken to them this way, or what? Krath Zahn snarled back. Chen's smile was colder than space itself. Or we'll teach you why they call Earth a death world. The transmission ended. Krath Zahn felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. These humans weren't just confident, they were eager for the fight. All ships, he commanded. Attack formation. We'll show these Deathworlders what happens to those who challenge the hegemony. The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for generations. The Vorthak came in with overwhelming force, expecting to crush the smaller human fleet through sheer numbers. What they got instead was a lesson in advanced warfare tactics. Admiral Chen had used the 3 days since her ultimatum to prepare the battlefield. Human ships had seeded the space around Cathara Prime with sensor networks, communication relays, and what the military called surprises. When the Vorthak fleet arrived, they found themselves fighting not just ships, but the space itself, missiles incoming from the asteroid field. Called the Vorthak Tactical Officer, Krath Zahn looked at his displays in confusion. There are no human ships in the asteroid field, but there were human weapons. The missiles had been launched from automated platforms hidden among the rocks, guided by sensors that had been tracking the Vorthak fleet since it entered the system. The first wave of missiles struck the Vorthak formation before they could react. 12 bioships died in the opening seconds of the battle. Return fire, Krath Zahn ordered. Destroy those platforms! But when his ships turned their weapons toward the asteroids, the human fleet struck from behind. The destroyers and cruisers had been hidden in the shadow of the gas giant, their engines shut down to avoid detection. Captain Santos, aboard the Relentless, watched the Vorthak ships turn away from her fleet. Just like a pack of wild dogs, she muttered. They always go for the obvious threat first. Her weapons fired in perfect coordination with 50 other human ships. The Vorthak rearguard simply vanished in a cloud of debris and organic matter. But the humans weren't done. As the Vorthak fleet tried to regroup, they found themselves under attack from every direction. Human fighters swarmed out of hidden positions on dead moons and disabled stations. Mines that had been floating silent and cold suddenly came to life, seeking out the largest enemy ships. The Vorthak had never faced an enemy that turned the entire battlefield into a weapon. War leader, called the damage control officer. We're taking heavy casualties. Our formation is breaking apart. Krathzon could see it for himself. His perfectly organized fleet was being torn to pieces by an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Every time his ships turned to face one threat, another appeared from an unexpected direction. How are they coordinating this? He demanded. Our jamming should be blocking their communications. The answer came from his intelligence officer, who was monitoring human transmissions. War leader, they're not using standard communications. They're using quantum entanglement networks. We don't even know how to jam that technology. The truth was even more impressive than the Vorthak realized. The human fleet wasn't just using advanced technology, they were using advanced tactics. Every captain knew their role in the overall plan. Every pilot understood how their small part fit into the larger strategy. This was warfare as humans had developed it on Earth, refined through thousands of years of conflict. Not just the technology of war, but the art of war. Lieutenant Morrison, flying his fighter through the chaos of the main battle, had just destroyed his 4th Vorthak ship when he noticed something interesting. Fleet Command, this is Wildfire. The big ships are protecting something in the center of their formation. Looks like a command vessel of some kind. Admiral Chen's voice came back immediately. All fighters, new priority target. Take out their command ship. The fighter attack that followed was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. 200 human pilots working together with perfect coordination carved through the Vorthak fleet like a knife through flesh. The Vorthak tried to stop them. They launched their own biofighters, creatures bred for space combat with natural weapons and armor. But the aliens had never faced pilots who had learned to fly in three-dimensional environments like Earth's atmosphere. Morrison found himself facing a biofighter twice the size of his ship. The creature was fast and aggressive, but it flew in predictable patterns. It was a predator, but it was used to hunting prey that couldn't fight back effectively. Morrison was used to dogfighting with other humans, beings who were just as smart, just as aggressive, and just as determined to win as he was. The alien fighter lasted 30 seconds. Across the battlefield, the same scene played out dozens of times. The Vorthak biofighters were individually powerful, but they had no experience with an enemy that was even more aggressive than they were. The human fighters reached the Vorthak command ship just as Krathzon was realizing how badly the battle was going. War leader, we must retreat, urged his tactical officer. We've lost over half the fleet. Krathzon looked at his displays with disbelief. His overwhelming force had been reduced to scattered groups of damaged ships in less than 2 hours. The humans had turned what should have been a simple conquest into a disaster. All ships withdraw to, he began. The human missiles hit his ship at that moment, not one or two, but dozens of them, all striking within seconds of each other. The devourer of worlds, the ship that had conquered nearly 50 planets, began to come apart. Krathzon felt his ship dying around him. As the bridge filled with smoke and the screams of his crew, he sent one final message to the retreating remnants of his fleet. Tell the Hegemony Council, the humans are not prey. They are something worse. They are predators who hunt predators. The explosion of the Vorthak flagship lit up space like a small star. When the light faded, the human fleet hung victorious among the wreckage of what had been the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, looking out at the debris field that had once been 300 enemy ships. Her own losses were painful but manageable. 30 ships destroyed, about 4,000 casualties. Admiral, called her communications officer. We're getting messages from across the galaxy. News of the battle is spreading fast, Chen nodded. She had expected this. Word would travel that the mighty Vorthak had been not just defeated, but destroyed by a species most aliens had never heard of. What kind of messages? She asked. Mostly requests for defense treaties, ma'am. Also some demands from the Galactic Council that we stop our military operations. Chen smiled grimly. Tell the Council they're welcome to file a complaint. Tell everyone else that humanity protects its friends, and send a message to Earth. We're going to need more ships. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans decided to fight a war, they fought to win. The Vorthak hegemony's capital world had not seen war in over 3 centuries. The massive biostructures that housed the ruling council were grown from living coral that fed on the suffering of conquered species. Gardens of tortured beings from 100 worlds decorated the palace grounds. Kept alive as trophies of victory, Emperor Vex Morgul sat on his throne of bones, watching the reports from the Kithari system with something approaching panic. His greatest war leader was dead. His most powerful fleet was destroyed, and the enemy responsible was a species he had never bothered to learn about. "How many ships do these humans have?" he demanded from his intelligence council. "Unknown, Imperial Majesty," replied the chief intelligence officer, trying to hide his own fear. "Our observers in the Sol system report constant military construction. They seem to be building ships faster than we can count them. And their other forces? That's concerning, Majesty. We've intercepted communications from dozens of species asking for human protection. The Altarians have signed a defense treaty. The Centauri Federation is sharing technology. Even some former hegemony subjects are rebelling and asking for human help." Emperor Vex Morgul felt the foundations of his empire cracking beneath him. For centuries, the Vorthak had ruled through fear. Other species stayed quiet and hoped to be overlooked. But now there was an alternative. Now there were protectors. "What do our allies say?" he asked. The silence that followed was answer enough. The hegemony had no allies, only subjects and victims. Their method of rule had made sure of that. "Majesty," said the military advisor carefully, "perhaps we should consider negotiating with these humans. Offer them a sphere of influence in exchange for—" The Emperor's roar of rage cut him off. "The hegemony does not negotiate with prey. We rule or we die." 3 months later, the largest fleet in galactic history emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Vorthak home system. But it wasn't just humans anymore. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the new flagship Earth's Promise, watching the combined fleet take position around her. Human ships still formed the core of the force, but they were joined by vessels from 17 different species. The Kithari had contributed their advanced shield technology. The Altarians brought their sensor arrays. The Centauri provided their energy weapons. But it was the humans who provided the tactics, the leadership, and the will to fight. "Fleet status report," Chen ordered. 437 ships ready for combat. "Admiral," reported Captain Rodriguez, now promoted to fleet captain. "All species reporting ready. The Kithari medical ships are standing by for casualty treatment." Chen nodded. This was the moment she had been preparing for since that first distress call. The final battle that would decide whether the galaxy would be ruled by fear or protected by those willing to fight for justice. "Open a channel to the Vorthak capital," she ordered. Emperor Vex Morgul's image appeared on the main screen. He was even more terrifying in person, a creature of claws and teeth and pure malice. Behind him, Chen could see the suffering of dozens of species kept as living decorations. "So," the Emperor hissed, "the prey comes to challenge the predator in his own den. You have won some battles, human, but you will die here." Chen looked at him with the calm confidence of someone who had seen real monsters before. "Emperor, I'm going to give you the same chance I gave your war leader. Surrender now, release all your prisoners, and face trial for your crimes, or what?" Vex Morgul laughed, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Or we'll show you what happens when predators meet apex predators." The Emperor's laugh died. There was something in the human's voice that spoke of absolute certainty. "You think you can conquer the homeworld of the hegemony? We have defense platforms that have never been breached, orbital fortresses that have stood for 1,000 years, and a fleet that will destroy in the first hour," Chen interrupted. "Just like we destroyed everything else you've sent against us." The transmission ended. Admiral Chen turned to her fleet. "All ships, begin the attack. Show them what a death world teaches its children." The battle for the Vorthak capital was different from all the others. This time, the humans weren't fighting to defend or liberate. They were fighting to conquer, to end a threat permanently. The orbital defenses were impressive. Massive platforms armed with weapons that could crack planets. The Vorthak had built them over centuries, each one a fortress that could hold off entire fleets. They had never faced an enemy that didn't fight fair. The human attack began with something the galaxy had never seen before: coordinated cyber warfare. While Vorthak attention was focused on the approaching fleet, human signals intelligence specialists were infiltrating their computer networks through captured equipment from earlier battles. The first sign of trouble came when 3 orbital platforms simply shut down. Their weapons went offline, their shields failed, and their life support systems began cycling through emergency protocols. "Impossible," roared the Vorthak defense commander. Those systems are completely isolated. But humans had learned centuries ago that no system was truly isolated. Every piece of equipment talked to every other piece, and humans had become very good at listening to those conversations. As the cyber attack spread through the defense network, the human fleet moved in for the kill. But they weren't alone. "All Cathari ships begin shield enhancement," came the voice of Zaraka, now admiral of the Cathari Defense Force. The peaceful aliens had learned to fight alongside their human protectors, providing defensive support that let the human ships take incredible risks. "Altarian sensor ships, paint all targets," ordered Admiral Veltran of the Altarian forces. Their advanced sensors could see through Vorthak stealth technology, marking targets for human weapons. The combined fleet moved like a single organism, each species contributing their strengths to the overall strategy. But at the center of it all were the humans, the ones who had turned a galaxy of victims into an army of liberators. Captain Santos, now commanding a squadron of 6 ships, led the assault on the main defense platform. The massive structure was armed with enough firepower to destroy a moon, but it had been built to fight enemies who attacked from predictable directions. Santos brought her ships in from above and below simultaneously, using the planet's gravity well to slingshot around to attack angles the platform's designers had never considered. Her weapons found weak spots that had been protected by doctrine rather than armor. The platform died in a cascade of explosions that lit up the dark side of the planet. Below, Platform 7 destroyed, Santos reported with satisfaction. Moving to next target, the orbital battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the pride of the Vorthak hegemony was floating debris, and the human fleet was preparing for planetary assault. Emperor Vex Morgul watched from his palace as dropships began landing across his capital city. He had prepared for this moment by activating every weapon system on the planet, turning his own world into a fortress. But he had made one critical mistake. He thought like a Vorthak, in terms of conquest and domination. The humans thought like liberators. The first targets of the human ground assault weren't military installations or government buildings. They were the prison camps, the slave quarters, and the torture facilities that dotted the capital. Sergeant Williams, now a major, led his regiment through the worst of the slave districts. What they found there made even battle-hardened soldiers sick with rage. "This is Major Williams to all units," he radioed. "Priority 1 is getting civilians to safety. Priority 2 is making sure none of these bastards escape to do this again." The Vorthak ground forces were formidable, creatures bred for close combat with natural weapons and armor. But they had never faced an enemy that fought with controlled fury, professional skill, and absolute determination. The human soldiers moved through the city like an unstoppable force. They used every lesson learned in 100 wars on Earth, every tactic developed through millennia of conflict. But more than that, they fought with the knowledge that they were ending something evil. The final confrontation came at the Imperial Palace. Emperor Vex Morgul waited in his throne room, surrounded by his personal guard and the preserved remains of his greatest victories. When the humans finally reached him, he expected to die in glorious battle as a warrior should. Instead, Admiral Chen walked into his throne room with a small escort and a pair of handcuffs. "Emperor Vex Morgul," she said formally, "you are under arrest for crimes against sentient life, genocide, and systematic torture. You will be tried before a galactic tribunal." The Emperor looked around his throne room, at the bones of his victims, at the suffering he had caused, at the empire he had built on cruelty. Then he looked at the human admiral who had brought it all crashing down. "What are you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Chen considered the question seriously. "We're what happens when a death world teaches its children that the strong have a duty to protect the weak." The trial of Emperor Vex Morgul was held on Earth, in the rebuilt halls of the International Criminal Court. Representatives from 200 species came to watch as the galaxy's greatest monster was held accountable for his crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. The testimony from survivors was heartbreaking. The verdict was unanimous.